How's it going, everyone? This is Jason Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer I'm logging on, and today I want to go over my memories and experience with the Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES. The first Nintendo game console that was released in the United States in 1985, 40 years ago. Of course, it was released in Japan a year prior, which was known as the Nintendo Famicom. But it was brought over here to the United States and Europe a year later as the Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES. That 8-bit machine. I have the classic mini setup right here with the two controllers. Of course, I actually don't hook up the old NES anymore these days, or any of the retro consoles that I can actually have access to on modern clones or platforms, or emulators, or even the Switch Online, etc., or compilations. Yeah, those days are out pretty much. I mean, those days for old hardware is pretty much out for me anymore. Yeah, I remember. Of course, I made a video about that. I made that video about that a year and a half ago, I think. Well, anyway, what's my favorite memories about the NES? Well, not talking about my favorite memories yet, but first of all, my beginnings. My actual beginning of the video games and Nintendo Entertainment System didn't come along until 1989, when I was 7 years old. Well, it was actually my sister got my oldest sister got a Nintendo Entertainment System for her birthday, which was the Action Pack bundle, which includes a cartridge of Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, and 2 NES controllers, and a Zapper light gun, which was the gray one. They also have the orange one as well, too. However, those were my first 2 games I played. I've been playing them timelessly, time to time, and I eventually got tired of them. I wanted to try a new game, though, hopefully one day. But my first video game that was actually bought for me, though, even though it was my sister's machine, was Ghosts and Goblins. My mom actually picked that out for me for some odd reason. But then again, I actually liked the game real well at the time. I mean, it was pretty weird and different. I mean, characters don't make a hun or a little bit confusing to what they are pronounced as, though. But at the same time, I did like the game really well. That's a lot of people's favorite games. My former neighbor that used to live by me, likes the game really well. Of course, Ghosts and Goblins was originally an arcade game ported to the NES. The arcade port, obviously the better one, but the Nintendo port was still pretty decent for its time, and I still have nostalgia memories of that one as well. And that was definitely one of the first horror games I actually played. I suppose horror games are Halloween related. The other one I played on the NES was Castlevania. That's one of the ones I rented. I actually liked the Castlevania one actually better. But they both share things in common. You know, glitches like the backwards fall when you get hit. When you get hit, you fall into the nearest pit, which really sucks. I mean, they have unlimited continues, though, at least, but I should go into those 2 games and do a comparison about that eventually. Well, anyway, that's pretty much how my video game journey started, though. And with other games like Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2 Adventures of Link, which are really good games, and the sequels to the follow-ups to the Mario games, Super Mario Bros. 2, and Super Mario Bros. 3, which Super Mario Bros. 3 was obviously the best one of the 3, and that's actually pretty much the best Mario game of the bunch on the NES. However, the first Mario game was totally innovative. It actually captured a new audience for North Americans when Japan brought the NES into North America and introduced a new level of gaming it's pretty much resurrected the video game industry since the failing of video games in North America after that infamous video game crash in 1983. Of course, that pretty much held Atari back even further when they came into competition, along with another Japanese video game competitor, Sega, which came along the following year with their console, the Sega Master System, also known as the SMS. Now, between the NES and the SMS, are pretty much each one of them has its own advantages, but pretty much an NES pretty much had a huge library of games to offer compared to the Sega Master System. I personally was a Sega guy on the next generation from the 16-bit era the most, but however, I never did own the Master System or the Dreamcast actually. Yeah, so pretty much the best competition of video games was actually during the 16-bit era. But however, I do love the 8-bit era too. See what else other games I enjoy playing on it. I also enjoy playing the wrestling games. Even the first WrestleMania game, even though that was flopped in somewhat ways, but at least the music was quite jamming because it was done by David Wise, and the game was developed by Rare. And usually composers of David Wise does good music for games, even though the ones that are mediocre. Yeah, what other shooting games I played on that system besides Duck Hunt? Which I also played Duck Hunt. I mean, I did a video on Duck Hunt a few times, so I'm probably going to do another one again too. Also like to do one on Hogan's Alley. That's another light gun shooter I played. Of course, light gun accessories for video game consoles are more noticeable to get just to get the thing justified to get to work on certain screens, like round screens or something that just didn't work on flat screens. It's another thing about old hardware, they didn't work on modern televisions. I mean, with the light guns and all that. However, light gun accessories are kind of making a comeback for retro games on modern televisions with clone consoles like the Polymega. They just released their own zapper. And it's pretty nice that they're moving ahead with that, though, at least, even though they're not perfect. I'll tell you one thing about the Nintendo Entertainment System. It actually brought a new level of gaming, and it actually still kicking ass to this day with many generations. I don't know how to describe this, from the regular NES to the Nintendo Switch 2. And the Super Mario Brothers game was quite innovative. It created a huge audience, not just for kids, but even for adults too. Mainly, the video games were kind of targeted towards kids at the time, but they're also trying to get more adults into it, though. But you know how it is. Yeah, Nintendo is also more notable for challenging type of games too. No matter if it's a good one or a bad one, each game certainly does have a challenge to it of its own. Super Mario Brothers, for instance, definitely has a challenge. And probably I'm definitely gonna make scripted videos of these games explaining them. This is just a little warm up, unscripted webcam kind of like speech. Anyway, the NES pretty much also contributed me to get a Nintendo Game Boy because I always liked to have something on hand. You know, Nintendo Game Boy didn't have color, but it still had a variety of games and portability. That was actually my first video game thing I had. I got that in 1991 for Christmas. Even though I can't really play the Game Boy anymore like that, though. I only play them off the big screen these days, unless if it's on the Switch. Which actually has lighting in background, of course. Of course, Game Boy never had lighting unless if you have some kind of a light boy attachment though, which is a light thing you can see during the night time, which didn't really do any good. However, the best lighting thing for the Game Boy was the Game Boy Advance SP, I think, where you can see in the dark, where it has light in the background, see it dark. You know how it is. Of course, 16-bit era is pretty much my favorite gaming generation of competition. And what the hell, I'm mainly talking about the NES for the most part. Well, right now I'm just keeping you all posted, so I don't think I really have much more to say. And I do apologize, I'm 100% prepared, and I still was kind of putting up with a cold here and there, and I haven't done been doing too much videos lately, so I want to keep you all posted. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching and listening. If you got any questions, please leave a comment below, and I'll respond to you as much as I can. Till the next time, thank you all very much. This is Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer. I'm logging on.